Hello and welcome to this very special conversation at Colaba Conversations. We've literally saved the best for the last. This is sort of the cherry on top, and we've called this conversation From Paris to Glasgow. It almost covers the historical arc of climate change as we've seen it from that Paris Climate Agreement in 2015 to the Glasgow conference that happens this year. What has become abundantly clear is that climate change and sustainable changes have to be made at a very organic level, from an individual to a community to a city. And one city that has really made large strides in that direction is our very own Mumbai here in Maharashtra. I am very glad to introduce to you our next guest and the one who will be speaking to me, the Honorable Environment Minister for Maharashtra, Mr. Aditya Thackeray. Thank you very much for taking out time, Mr. Thackeray. So much to talk about in terms of climate change and sustainability. But let me start with an interesting initiative that you've just announced at the Maharashtra government, which is the Maji Vasundhara initiative. And what's great about it is the way it links, what I was just talking about, an individual, a community, a corporate, and the not-for-profits as well. What is it that you saw, that would really make this happen, and why are you excited about this campaign?
Firstly, thank you for hosting the session for us. We're really happy and proud to have this Collaba conversation in Mumbai. And we're looking forward to a physical presence of everyone next year onwards. We're looking forward to it, to have a lot of people come to Mumbai, come to Maharashtra, and see what it is about. Going beyond that, this last session, of course, all the sessions have been really great. I would like to thank everyone who've participated in that from the world over. And like you said, you've called this session the cherry on the top of the cake. So it's going to be good, hopefully. I think what we've realized now is what we saw as erratic weather events in the past few years. They've actually been major symbols and signals of climate change. And therefore, on Gandhi Jayanti last year, that's 2nd October, we started with Maji Vasundhara. It's a simple thing, actually. Normally, when we speak about climate change, it's the governments that are really ignorant to it, or we're preaching the world about climate change but not really looking inward. What we thought is when we start off with Maji Vasundhara, it generally means my planet and how do we take care of it. So we've divided this competition into 5 elements of nature, and we've told all the government machinery, all our collectors, our divisional commissioners, our CEOs, our municipal commissioners, because both urban and rural areas will contribute to either climate change mitigation or adaptation, or probably increase climate change, God forbid. So we've divided it into 5 elements of nature, and we've said whatever you can really do to contribute towards mitigation and adaptation of climate change is what we are going to judge you on. And the competition runs from 2nd October to the 5th of June. We're looking inward, we're looking at our own carbon footprint. So we started off with our own machinery. We said, let's see what our travel audit looks like. Does everyone have mobility that is clean and green? Do we travel short distances? Can we travel them on our bicycles, or can we get electric mobility into our government systems? Can we walk from our homes to our offices, or can we just use one day in the week to not use our traditional cars, which emit carbon? The other is, of course, looking at our offices. Whether in our own offices we have rainwater harvesting, rainwater percolation, because when we speak about cities, really, and when we speak about urbanization, we also have this whole concept of the concrete jungles. And because of these concrete jungles, the water that used to percolate into our aquifer or groundwater has reduced. So we're trying to make rainwater percolation pits so that the rainwater actually seeps down to the ground and recharges our groundwater tables or our wells. Third, we're looking at whether our sources of energy for the whole building, are we really efficient on energy? Do we have LED lights, or do we have mechanisms to prevent the electricity from being wasted in rooms that are not occupied? Can we take solar energy onto our rooftops? These are some of the things we're looking at. Can we plant more trees? Do we have better waste segregation mechanisms within our offices? So I think we started off with that. The response now has been tremendous. So now we've done, like you said, many more things into this. So we are getting in schools, we're getting in the police force, we're getting in corporates, we're getting in NGOs. We're working on this concept called co-governance rather than non-governmental organizations. We're saying, look, this is something which we all are going to face together. And if we have to face together, we've got to stand together and act together. And climate change is not something we're looking at. Very often it's said that this is the last decade, that we have 10 years to repair the planet, 10 years to heal the wounds. There are two things I primarily believe in. One is, we as human beings are nobody to repair or heal the world. nature repairs itself. What we are doing is damaging the world. We need to stop that damage. And two, we don't have 10 years. If we don't act starting from today, we're not going to act at all. I'll give you a small example. The year 2020, we faced COVID. We faced a lot of problems in terms of the zoonotic disease. But going beyond that, what Maharashtra has faced, we faced two cyclones that we've never seen before in the last 10 years or more than that. We faced erratic weather events, be it in the farms, be it in the cities, and the quantum of relief money that we've had to compensation that we've had to give to people or farmers or urban people is almost at the tune of 13,500 crores in a year. Now, if that scale we can invest in climate change mitigation and action, I think we'd be a better place altogether.
No, I hear you. And indeed, it's been a completely sort of crazy year climate wise. Congratulations as well on Mumbai being added to the C40 list. And like you said, Mr.
Thank
Tantre,
you.
thinking that it happens in the context of a post-COVID world where, all these threats are more real and they're more intense as well. Tell me for yourself as Environment Minister, what C40 changes for you in terms of your focal length going ahead for the city and what you want it to be?
So I was reading actually this book by Mr. Pope and Mike Bloomberg, and it's called The Climate of Hope. And of course, I was just going through it, and the different types of initiatives that cities world over have taken to fight climate change. And here in Mumbai itself, we've declared the RA forest, a patch of 808 acres, almost 329 hectares, within our city limits as a reserve forest. I don't think any other city in the world has done that. Way back in 2013, one of the things I was really pushing was electric mobility. Back then, we got about 6 electric buses. Today, we have a fleet of almost 380 electric buses. We're going to take it up to 25% of our total fleet in the next 2 or 3 years. We're planting urban forests. So, in a city nearby to us, Thane, we've got one urban forest of almost 9 acres with Miyawaki plantation, intensely planted. And now, a city like Mumbai or a city like Thane or Pune or Latur or Nagpur, we are doing urban plantations with the Miyawaki plantation method. So we're doing intensive urban plantations that are giving us thickets in the middle of the city. So in Mumbai itself, we are going to plant about 300,000 trees, and we've gone more than 90% of our target for the year 2020. I think these are some of the things that we're really focused on. And what I genuinely believe is when we speak about, again, climate change or environment or doing anything to repair the world or do a bit for this healing, it's the urban centers that really matter more. It's the cities around the world that really matter more because we speak about quality of life, we speak about urbanization, we speak about a whole culture of development, and of course, use and throw. And that is, I think, where the problem really lies because we forget that in quality of life, environment plays a major, major part, not just concrete. We forget that in development, there is a word or a prefix called sustainable, not just development without sustainable. That is where the problem lies. When we speak about the use and throw culture, we forget about segregating our waste before we throw. So when we speak about climate change and mitigation, climate change and adaptation, we need to have cities at the forefront of this fight. We need to have cities like New York, London, Paris, LA, Mumbai, Moscow, San Francisco, Sydney at the forefront, but also hand holding our junior cities or smaller towns from the neighborhoods. I think this culture that really would seep into the cities when we speak about urbanization. The good parts about urbanization can spread across the world because more and more smaller towns and villages are facing urbanization as a pattern. So the cities will lead it, and therefore I thought it was imperative that Mumbai becomes a part of C40. A, the amount of work we're doing on climate change action and mitigation. B, the amount of deliberations, the amount of negotiations, the amount of discussions we can have with our fellow cities around the world and implement the best of it all into our city. The potential was tremendous.
And the fact that a city like Mumbai is taking this on multiple fronts. I mean, it's not just weather changes, but also sea level rises. So there's a lot on your plate as Environment Minister. I want to unpack some of what you just talked about, especially with regards to what happened in RA. I still remember the two-word tweet that you put out: "RA saved!" exclamation mark.
Yes.
Uh, And that was important, not just because, as you said, for creating forest and thicket area, but the kind of heat island effect that was happening in a city like Mumbai. Tell me why RA was so emotional and so close to you, and why it has had a salutary effect, especially in terms of lowering temperatures, etc., in a closed area like Mumbai.
So RA traditionally was a milk colony actually, and a lot of these milk colonies were settled there so that we could have our milk supply to the city from that area. But if you actually travel around that area, really, you have the Sanjay Gandhi National Park, you have Yor on the other side, and you have a tiger safari, a lion safari, and you have a huge buffer zone where biodiversity actually exists. And when I speak about biodiversity, I don't just mean the larger one. Of course, you have the leopards roaming around there. You have this beautiful leopard is called the Luna, and Luna has her 9 cubs roaming around. Going beyond that, you have the rusty spotted cat. You have a lot of lesser species like spiders, and you've got a lot of endemic creatures to RA as well. You've got a lot of flora fauna, and if you go there, you'll be fully convinced that it is a forest. Um, in the past few years, slowly, especially the last 2 or 3 decades, we've seen this whole urban sprawl move into RA, and then the man-animal conflict happens, human-animal conflict happens there, where we believe that the leopard is coming into our homes. We're actually going into its home. So, and then we've got rulings, judgments, we've got government orders where development was allowed into that area. What I thought essentially was to declare this as a forest, and thankfully, because of the Chief Minister, Mr. Uddhav Thackeray, the DCM, Mr. Ajit Pawar ji, then you've got the whole team, RA Minister, Mr. Sunil Kedar, and the Forest Minister, Mr. Sanjay Rathod ji, all of them put together. I was just trying to make the ends meet out there, trying to coordinate stuff, but all of them came together and declared this area of 329 hectares in a city like Mumbai as a forest. Now, if you've lived in a city like Mumbai or been to the city of Mumbai, you will see what a bustling metropolis it is. It's probably one of the busiest cities in the world, one of the densest cities in the world. And in that, we are an island city. We've got 7 islands linking up. So we don't have an area which we can just, go in a circular motion outwards. So for us, what is really crucial is to have urban thickets in our city like RA. And RA, like I said, it's got a bustling wildlife habitat. So it was very, very crucial for us to prevent this so-called development of human needs and human greeds to get into RA and protect RA, because finally we need to protect these areas. I had said this way back in 2017, 2016, when we were fighting for RA. And like you said, when I tweeted RA saved, it was the opposite of save RA, which was till that date, when till the chief minister signed it. And we said save RA because back then I had said that today we have Wi-Fi hotspots in the city and we connect to it. A few years later, when we end up cutting all the forests like that lie around us, we'll have oxygen hotspots. Now, unfortunately, because of COVID, we've started having that, but we don't want to cut down our forests and have oxygen hotspots everywhere. If you look at our city again, traditionally we've had 2 weather stations, one in Colaba, one in Santa Cruz. And it's always been that the Santa Cruz weather station always recorded a slightly lesser temperature than Colaba. Today, both have almost come to the same area because Colaba was always a sprawling urban sprawl and Santa Cruz was the green area. Today, more or less, both the stations have a huge urban sprawl and population density around it. We need green areas in our city. There was a survey recently that was published in the newspapers as well, where we had a couple of heat maps of the city. And wherever we have a good area of green cover, the heat was much lesser than informal housing, be it something like slums, because of the steel or asbestos sheets or the plastic sheets that cover it. So we also need to look at formal, informal housing, and we need to look at green cover like RA within our city.
Yeah, that's the World Resource Institute data you're talking about.
Exactly.
In fact, I was interested to read as well recently. I think the swamp area in the Dodamarg Taluka has also been declared a biodiversity site. So it's heartening to hear that this is spreading out. The other thing that you raised, Mr. Thackeray, was about electric vehicles, and I know that that's something you are moving forth with, with quite a bit of alacrity. Why do you think that is important for a commercial city like Mumbai? And do you see that tying in with goals of net carbon neutrality?
It is very crucial for us as the world to move towards that, because when we look at emissions, of course, that is a major source of emissions, and we're going towards cleaner fuel. But yet, it's not enough to look at what we're doing with that when we compare it to the global environmental crisis that we're facing today. And I've been a strong believer of electric mobility way back since about 2012, 2013 when I first came across it. We got electric buses back then, and that was a time of 8 hours of charging and 120 kilometers of one run. Today we've got fast charging and about 300 kilometers of one run. So I think it's rapidly improving. We've got a huge scope, and I foresee that in the next 2 or 3 years, the world would see a lot more electric cars around the world and on the streets, especially a state like Maharashtra, where we have cities like Mumbai, Thane, Nagpur, Kolhapur, Sambhajinagar, Latur. All of these cities really can have a lot of electric cars all over. But what I strongly believe also is when we are looking at developing electric mobility or alternative fuel like biogas or hydrogen cell fuel, but when we speak about electric mobility, we need to have a cleaner ecosystem of electric mobility. We can't be burning coal on one side and fueling electric cars. We need to have an ecosystem of wind energy or offshore wind, or we can have solar energy. So, one of the things that we've actually pursued MSRDC and got done is we've solarized our highways. So, the Mumbai Nagpur Samruddhi Highway would have a generation capacity of 230 megawatts of solar energy. We're also trying to have floating solar panels on our lakes and dams across the state. So we're doing these experiments so that we can really have clean energy needs met by 2025.
That's really important. And I think of most cities in India, the average Mumbaiker is so responsible about public transport. So salutations to everyone in Mumbai as well who really practices that and just doesn't just preach it. The other thing that has sort of put Mumbai on the climate map is the Mithi River project, of course, but also the intensity of the beach cleanups. And I must mention you within that because you've been there pre-COVID, especially right there in the middle, in the mix of everything. This one was, I think, personally important for you, wasn't it? The Mithi River, of course, because of its, sewage consequences, but the beach cleanup as well.
Both of it, because I live by the Mithi, and if it overflows, it's going to come into my home. And for most of Mumbaikars, it's a very, very crucial issue. But even the beaches, I go there with Afroz, I go there with Chinu, with Malar, all these, guys, fabulous guys working on the beaches. And Afroz has become environmental hero. But what he does, or what even I do, we just go there out there for, relaxation. And while cleaning, we actually cleanse our own minds and our systems. We just feel so calm while at the beach cleanup because you're just enjoying the wind, you're looking at a cleaner side. It's almost like, when you tidy a room and you feel good about it, that you've achieved something. It's that feeling. So, yes, the beach cleanups. We're also working on the Mithi River. That is going on very well. There are three other rivers that we're working on within the city of Mumbai. That's Dahisar, Oshiwara, and Poisar. We're looking at cleaner nalas. And overall, we're also looking at the rivers across Maharashtra. So the Nag Nadi in Nagpur, we're looking at the Panchganga. In Kolhapur, we're looking at the Mula Mutha River in Pune. What we're really working on at a policy level is a marine litter policy. Because when we speak about water, when we speak about rivers, when we speak about cleaner oceans, we need to start at our own taps. That's where we're starting off with. And if we can have a marine litter policy in place, I think we'd have achieved a lot because we're actually taking out this policy to reach out to the citizens and have a better, more responsible usage of water. For example, one of the big steps Mumbai is taking today is we're making about 8 sewage treatment plants. As of today, we throw almost 3,200 million liters of water per day untreated into the ocean. With the STPs up in the next 6 years, we have almost 2,800 million liters a day recycled, cleaned, and back into Mumbai's usage. So that way we have more water for Mumbai and cleaner water um, for usage rather than just being thrown into the sea. So yes, that's quite a lot on our plate in terms of the marine policy, but it's fun to do all this. I think it's good when you see the results and when you know that this is for the next 50, 100 years.
Absolutely, and you're the one who provided Afroz the support when he needed it, when he was beginning to flag, and it's great that he kept the momentum going from there. Two-part question to you on financing. Because as you mentioned, there is an incredible cost involved with this. What do you think is the better way to do it going ahead? Should there be more incentives given to green tech? Should it become easier in terms of raising green financing? That's one part of it. And the second that's interesting in terms of what Mumbai is doing is providing tax incentives on waste segregation. That's another really interesting way to go about it, where A, you're looking at sourcing finance, but B, you're also looking at some kind of financial reward for making, responsible choices about your environment.
That is true. What we did is within the development rules of the city, we've actually excused from the FSI the composting pits that every housing society or every building or every home can make within its compound. And this is a story of great hope, because when we started off in 2017, almost 10,000 metric tons of garbage every single day was generated by the city of Mumbai. We started off with requesting every citizen that please segregate your waste. You need to segregate waste before it comes out to the streets, because it is really, really important that we have our dumping yards closed in the next few years. With the bulk generators, like more than 100 kgs, we said we won't pick up your garbage till you segregate it. Trust me, within that year, we reduced our waste generation and collection from 10,000 metric tons a day to almost about 6,500 metric tons a day. Um, I think that gives us great hope. And this was almost only about 25 to 30% of the people doing it. So now, as we move further, with more and more awareness coming in children, in kids, in students, the youth, and then, of course, spreading it to all generations, I think that is something where we look at with great hope. But in terms of financing, yes, there are global green bonds available, carbon credits available. But I've come to believe that when we speak about financing climate change initiatives, there are two ways to look at it. One is, of course, incentives and support, financial support, vis-a-vis what we are spending on compensation for erratic weather events or climate change effects. And the other is going beyond that. When we look at this as a climate emergency, when we look at this as an imperative that we have to follow, something we cannot really avoid. For example, electric mobility. For example, energy consumption, which is more efficient. For example, rainwater harvesting or afforestation. Going further, looking at the state of our world and our climate crisis, I think we have to think beyond just incentives, because incentives is something which is just giving it a push. This is going to be a daily requirement for us, and I think how we breathe, it is that essential. So somewhere we need to stop thinking about incentives. Somewhere we need to stop thinking about the support we give, and it is a necessity. We conduct our daily lives in a way that the luxury goods we buy off the hand without thinking of incentives. The normal food that we buy is without incentives. This is something that is very similar to that. So incentives will remain for a short time. Incentives will remain for a period that we can really survive and sustain this incentive period. But going beyond that, this is going to be a necessity. So financially, I think it's going to be wise to invest more in climate change without thinking of incentives, because this is something for our own survival.
As you said, time is of essence for everyone, actually, not just for Mumbai as a city. As Environment Minister, tell me what your top three priorities are over the next couple of years.
I think there is only one priority I have. Whatever we call as development, we need to add sustainable to it. And I'll give you a small example of the year 2020 and the state of Maharashtra. If you see, we've faced one of the biggest COVID crises in the world, and that is because we've been very, very transparent and accountable for every number of every COVID patient that we've counted. We've been the highest in terms of the tests. We've been highest in number of reporting the tests, and also a great recovery number. So we faced a COVID crisis like never before. We faced a crisis like never before. But all throughout that crisis, we've had three major functions that have been going on. Apart from COVID, that was one of the biggest things we were managing. But we've had an industrial investment, right from data centers to textiles to automotive to almost anything you can speak of, in three phases in Magnetic Maharashtra, to the tune of 1,15,000 crores as MOUs, and more than 85% of those MOUs have been realized, land has been allotted, and the work has started. So that was one. While we did that, the infrastructure work really did not stop. So the coastal road is going on full scale. The Mumbai-Nagpur highway is being made. Pune Ring Road is being made. Our new airport at Navi Mumbai is being made. GMLR, whatever infrastructure work was going on, be it dams, be it roads, be it ports, nothing has stopped. That has been going along. The third most important thing, which we're really proud of, along with infrastructure and along with investment, is environment. Last year, we declared RA as a forest of 329 hectares within our city. We've got 10 conservation reserves out of 15 declared in one shot. We declared our 50th sanctuary in Maharashtra. We've got Marine Biodiversity Reserve. We've really had meetings almost every month to attach more and more mangrove-like areas and mangrove areas into official protection of the Indian Forest Act. And by June, we'll have almost 10,000 hectares of mangroves newly coming into the protection of the Indian Forest Act 1927. So these three things can go in hand in hand. They can go in coexistence moving forward. Infrastructure, investment, industry, and environment are not things to be looked at in different silos. We can coexist looking at development which is sustainable. I think sustainable development is what we need today in the world because human life can go on, but the quality of life really comes in with environment, and that's very crucial.
Mm. I am conscious that I've taken up my time in this conversation, but I have one last question for you. You know, you're a young leader as well, and that gives you, I suppose, the courage to be more ambitious about your dreams as in terms of what you want to see for your city or your state. Tell me what you want the world to look at Mumbai as when they think about environment and when they think about climate change and when they think, as you said, about sustainability. What is the example that you want Mumbai to put forward for the world to see?
To be very honest, it's that basically uh, just the other day when we started the heritage walk for the Mumbai Municipal Corporation headquarters as a part of our tourism initiative, we discovered that there's a goddess on top of the building, and below her is a motto saying "Urbs Prima in Indis," and it was engraved out there about 120 years ago. It's a Latin thing that really calls the city of Mumbai the first or the most important city in India. And financially, it has been. It has been in terms of the growth. It has been in terms of the city of dreams because we have industry, we have cricket, we have Bollywood, we've got dreams really growing in Mumbai. And looking at that, I'd love to be having Mumbai at the forefront of the climate change initiatives as a leader of climate change initiatives and sustainable development. I love that personally. But I think we've gone beyond that time that we see someone as a leader and we all try to follow it. It's time for all of us collectively to be leaders in our own way and lead climate change initiatives and sustainable development at the same rate, same pace, which is hopefully fast enough and important enough to go hand in hand together. Because I think the time for a singular leadership has gone away. It's time that we collectively work on this. So all of us can be really leaders and we can contribute a large part to that. So I'm not going to be selfish for the city of Mumbai. I'm going to speak for the world and the human race on this.
That's fantastic. Be an example in yourself, right? Thank you
Exactly.
very much. So appreciate your time and thoughts today. And just echoing your sentiments, let's hope next year Colaba Conversations happens in Colaba and we can really, have this conversation on a much deeper level. But appreciate your time and everything that you've had to add to today's chat.
Thank you. Thank you, Vitali. Thank you.